Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Zone. My name is Bob Wheeler. This is Jerry Bissett. Everybody knows Jerry, the pro golfer who's on a little vacation right now.
Yeah. Well, no, I
You played
played
today?
last week.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I played last Friday, and then we were supposed to play Monday, but the weather was pretty bad Monday, so maybe a little later.
Never stopped you before, has it?
Yeah, the rain and cold does. Absolutely, and we've got a great show
We
today.
do. We got two of the greatest coaches in the world here. Don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Agree with me. Help me out
This
here.
year, anyway, huh?
Bill Nesbitt and Chad Miller. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. I'm sure we're at least the two best coaches at this table right now anyway.
Whatever works.
And the two worst.
And the two worst.
Where's the dividing line? Well, you had a great season. Congratulations. You went deep in the playoffs.
Well, I
Want to
don't know
go
if we went
deeper?
deep, but we certainly
Sure, it's deep.
had a little had some fun.
Yeah.
Playing for a district championship, that's deep. That's deep. You won one. That's a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's big. You get into the playoffs, you win one. And I thought this week, today, I talked to you earlier in the season about kind of going over the entire season, a little bit at a time, and I thought we'd try that.
Sure.
So I thought, well, let's start out with your opening win. It was a 43-0 win over Warren Fitzgerald. Is that when you knew your team was good?
Well, that's when we knew for sure we were going to play fast anyway. That we'd be physical and we were going to be fast. We always, I don't think there's a coach in America that doesn't think that his team's going to be good any given season.
You hope not, anyway.
Well, if you go into the season, don't think you're going to be good, you probably need to switch professions.
Yes.
But certainly we knew we had a fair amount of talent and some, but more importantly, we knew we had some real hard-working kids and some good leadership. So we thought we were going to have a pretty successful season in the win-loss column. But certainly that first game validates your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we go through this, if any one thing, one player that maybe came out of nowhere, popped into the scene that you didn't know was going to be that good, go ahead and mention it. Your second game, you're 1-0 at that point. Your second game, St. Clair Shores Lakeview, you beat them 46-0. You remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. They were a very physical team. They were very physical. Their backs were big and physical. I think we just, speed-wise, I think was our big advantage in that game. But that's another one where I think we found out we could be very physical. The first game was probably because Fitz was more of a spread team. Mm-hmm. We were able to see how well our speed matched up, and this week, I think that week we were able to see our physicality match up.
Yeah, we gave them fits on the edge. I mean, we trapped well and we got up top a couple times and scored in the last 5 seconds of the first half, and we're just much quicker than them also.
Okay, it makes a difference.
I remember looking at Tom, my partner, in the booth there at that point at the game. We're like, we got something special going on this year. Hope it stays. Like last year, it was a good start, a bad finish. We thought, can this happen 2 years in a row? We didn't think so because the way the guys looked that night, I mean, they were all pumped. I'd never seen that fast of a team at St. Clair.
Well, we definitely on both sides of the ball, at the line of scrimmage and in the backfield on both sides of the ball, I think we played fast. And a lot of it had to do with, I think, our kids, we had a fair amount of experience. Even though we were still young this year, we still had we had young experience. So, and when you know what you're doing, you play faster. So our kids were comfortable. I think we maybe streamlined or simplified some things on defense and offense. We had great familiarity. Coach Miller does a great job with our kids, all year long, but particularly in the summertime, getting them up to snuff from our 7-on-7s to our, our off-season workouts. We're able to still go over some things with our kids, and that allows us to play fast early in the season.
And you and I had talked for the last 2 or 3 years about getting in on the weights. And I think it was last year, maybe the year before, you were pretty excited because you had a huge turnout for kids in the summertime on the weights. And I think that probably paid off a lot too.
Oh yeah, and it really started for this past season. Started in the previous November or December, and we just had an outstanding progression in our weight training, participation. And I say progression because we expect to be better this next year. I mean, that's certainly, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So we hope that that trend continues. But we had a really strong participation, and to go with our really strong participation, kids playing 3 sports or 2 sports. So kids that were still wrestling and playing hockey were still lifting weights in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that played huge dividends for us this year.
Well, football's a reaction thing. You had a little bit of experience. You don't have to stop and think what you have to do. You react to it. And then if you're bigger, faster, and stronger, you're going to win the battle.
Well, that helps.
It
Absolutely.
definitely helps. So yeah, at that point, you're 2-0. Next, it was Sterling Heights, and you beat them 35-0. Notice the first 3 games, all shutouts. What do you remember about that game?
They're very physical. We jumped out 14-0, and they shut us out in the second quarter. And I really used that as a theme for the rest of the year. That was really the only quarter until we got into the tougher part of our schedule at the end of the year. That second quarter against Sterling Heights was the only quarter anybody had shut us down. So we made some adjustments and came and put a couple quick ones on the board in the third quarter. But Sterling Heights was very physical, and they'll be much improved next year.
Yeah,
They were tough up front.
Yeah,
I'm sure
agree.
the other guys that played them will say the same thing.
They were probably, out of all the teams that I saw, other than St. Clair and Marine City, they were probably the most physical team I saw
They
all
were
year.
Oh, absolutely.
Tough guys, yeah.
They were very tough, very physical, and they had some good athletes.
Yes, they did.
Sometimes, I mentioned, we went to Tower this year. We haven't got to them yet, but I thought they were very physical up front, but maybe didn't have the athletes. These guys had a combination.
Yeah.
And they had some players.
Yep, I agree. Next, you went to 4-0 at home against New Haven. You beat them 66-7. Not a big surprise there.
No, that's one of those deals in the MAC. Have crossovers, and I'm not sure it's what you consider to be a real competitive, balanced team. I don't mean that with respect or disrespect to New Haven. It's just we're a much larger school, and so going in a game like that on paper, you say this team should do all right. And those are kind of dangerous games sometimes because the kids can go out there and they hear enough of that. We've played well up to that point. We've played some teams. We just came off Sterling Heights, which is a very good foe. Bigger school than us. It's easy for the kids to kind of get lackadaisical. Unfortunately, we weren't. We did come out and play well.
Yeah, but the defense let you down that game. They scored a point.
There
goes the shutout.
Everybody looks at those things, and certainly who doesn't like to get shutouts? But sometimes those things are also blessings in disguises because sometimes as those streaks continue, they become the danger of them becoming the focus or concern. And it should be a byproduct of what we do, not what we're trying to accomplish. It should be something that just happens if we perform well. So at least it took away that concern that kids are naturally going to have, and even my coaches might have of what do we do to get a shutout, or what do we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen. You do that, what you wind up doing sometimes is suffocating yourself because you're unwilling to grow as a team defensively because you're trying to protect something. And you know how it is. No matter what you're trying to, whatever it is, football or not football, if you're so busy trying to protect something that you have, you're not going to venture outside your balance. And we needed to continue to grow, so it wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Week 5, now you're 4-0. Week 5, you go to Warren Woods Tower and beat them 42-6. You remember it?
Yeah, they were really that was the first time
Right,
that
we
a
were
team took the ball from the 20 and marched down inside our 10. That's the first time it happened all year. New Haven got one, but they got up top on us. And these guys were physical, a big, strong fullback, and averaged 280, 290 on the front line. But they were limited athletically, so eventually our speed got to them. We busted a couple long ones, and that's really how we pushed the game from a 14-0 game to a 30 or 40-point game.
And that was a great, like Coach said, all those games, within the games, there's always new challenges, and it was a great learning opportunity for us. Like Chad said, the idea that they moved the ball on us on a sustained drive, which hadn't happened. And so we had to be able to learn to come back from that. And that prepared us, I think, for future weeks.
Now you're 5-0. For lack of a better word, it's the cupcake part of your schedule.
Yep.
I mean, it was for everybody that didn't play Marysville, Marine City, and St. Clair. It was the cupcake part of their schedule. There's no question. I thought the MAC Gold was down this year.
Yes, I would agree.
competitive-wise.
They
I
had
thought it
two
was down.
halves. You were in the top half, and they were in the bottom.
Yeah, and that was the 3 local teams were the top. But now at 5-0, you play Marysville, and you handle them rather nicely, 39-12. Is that the real beginning?
You know, it's hard to say the real beginning or not. I know exactly what you mean by that, by the way. And so probably in some respects, yes, because it being the tougher part of our schedule. Because when you're 5-0 and you've played teams whose records have not been that strong, it's possible for people to still wonder, you know, can you perform against a good team? Whether it's outsiders or even kids on the team, you know, you don't know what goes on inside a kid's head sometimes.
That's right.
And so they might still have a little bit of self-doubt. So that certainly should have removed that self-doubt.
I would think so.
And what you get here with the teams close by us, one thing as an offensive coach, I can count on one thing. Their defense is going to come out and not look like it did in the prior 4 weeks. When they play us, they're going to do some things differently based on our schemes, and Marysville did that. They took some things away, so we had to take advantage of what else was out there. You can almost expect that Marine City and Marysville are going to do something different than they've done for the last month, and that was certainly the case.
You know what impressed me the most in that game is your secondary. I mean, granted, your defensive line and linebackers did a great job because they kept pressure on that quarterback the whole time. But the secondary, if they were beaten a little bit, they closed fast.
Yeah.
And that's where I really recognized that your secondary was fast.
Yeah, we did. We have pretty good speed, and not just speed on a stopwatch, but you know, started to have some competitive speed. You know, some confidence speed. So yeah, that allows them to close. What I was real happy with is, you know, we always talk with the kids about, you know, you can't always create your opportunities. You have to take advantage of the ones that present themselves. And when we're getting those interceptions, I think we had 6 in that game.
I believe it was.
You know, because we took advantage when the ball did show up on our hands. Because if you can watch, I don't care if it's high school, you know, college or the NFL, you can watch any defensive back at the end of the year, a starting defensive back. He's probably had 12 or 14 opportunities for interceptions, and a lot of times those guys have 2 or 3 picks. And you say, well, this guy's so much better because he caught the ball when it showed up, and you didn't. And so I was real proud of our kids when the ball showed up and made the plays that presented themselves.
Yeah, and I thought Marysville had some fast receivers too, and yet your kids outran the ball.
Oh, they unquestionably had some athletes. I think the key there though was our front. We put pressure on Smith, and he was throwing off his back foot and scrambling a lot.
That's right.
Because he's a heck of an athlete, and we saw him very effectively throw on the move and move the pocket and throw on the run in previous games. But I think we got him to have to push the envelope of really moving and having to throw under more duress than just simply moving. You know, other games I think he had to move to find a better spot to throw from. Here sometimes I think he was running for his life, and he tend to throw a little more or less accurately in those situations.
Yep, I agree. Okay, then you go to St. Clair Shores and take on Lake Shore, and you beat them pretty good, 44-7. Kind of a nondescript game, or?
Yeah, it was because it was started very much like a couple of years when I went there, and we were flat. You know, it's a game. It was what we called a trap game many times, and we just finished playing Marysville. Next week's Marine City, and now we have a team that has been pretty good for a few years, and I think their head coach Tom Iwanecki does a very good job with Lake Shore. So they were going to, even though they were down this year, they were going to give us everything they had, and our kids came out flat in lieu of all those things. So it was a little nervous in some respects, because our kids all season, to their credit, took a very business-like attitude. But sometimes you need more than business. You had that passion. I don't think we had passion to start that game, and we did recover, which was nice.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
obviously.
3-0 at the end of the first quarter. So
Oh.
it was 3-0.
Yeah.
And I think they ran 70 plays to our 31 that night. They had the ball the whole game. We just again busted a couple.
Yeah, quite a few, 44 points.
Yeah.
Busted a couple.
Busted a few.
Yeah. Well, then the first blemish of the season comes in. You go into East China Stadium hosting Marine City and get beat by 1 point. What did that game tell you? Did the kids bounce right back, or?
The next game, we learned a lot from that game.
Uh-huh.
You know, prior to the game, you know, it's one of those things. It's a learning experience. By that I mean, I think our kids were prepared in many ways. You know, they put their time in the off season. They understood what they were supposed to do. I think they had great confidence, but there was still a little bit of psychological edge. By that I mean, our kids were very concerned about the outcome prior to the outcome. You know, and it was much we talked about it. You just have to live through it before you can get over that hurdle. And I think we were trying to win the game on play 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, paralyzed ourselves. We were paralyzed at times in that game, and we watched the film, and you talked about the speed. We didn't play with much speed that game. At the line of scrimmage, we did not play with speed. In the backfield, at defensive backfield, offensive backfield, I think we still did. We didn't play with the speed we typically did. And it was, again, I don't think it was because our kids didn't have confidence, but there's still that little, there was, like I said, it was just, they were so worried about the outcome. They wanted it too much in a weird way that they thought they were worried about the outcome, and you can't worry about the outcome.
And I think there's a little bit of a mystique there from Marine City too, because for 3 decades, well, you know, because you were a part of it, for 3 decades, they've been
the king of the area.
the program,
Right.
the program. And I grew up with Marysville as the king of the program, and I know when we went in to play Marysville, even though we might have been as good, there was that mystique where you had to play a little better, you had to do a little more. And, you know, you just kind of wonder if that's in the kids' head too.
Well, I think so, and it starts way before the season. It starts all through town, et cetera. When, as we continue to evolve and get better, the comments have to stop being, "You're going to get them this year," or stop being, "Why, this is our year," as
I
opposed.
think we can beat them.
Yeah, and if you hear that enough times from community members, and I don't mean that as
No.
an attack on the community
No,
members,
I know,
they mean
I
it in a
know.
completely positive way, but not understanding the impact on a kid's head is that means you're putting a seed in your head that means they're better than you, and they're not better than us.
Right.
And they certainly weren't. They beat us. Now, there's no disrespect there, but I think it's still in the back of our heads was through the 360 some days prior to in the off season and during the season of if the comment is you're going to get them this year, the implication is normally it's like that's an exception as opposed to an expectation.
That's right.
And that's the big difference. And we got to get to where it's an expectation.
Got to expect victory.
Absolutely. And once we get to that, and I think we're getting closer, then all of a sudden we're not worried about the outcome because we're not trying to win 12 previous games or worried about the end of the game. Let's just play the stinking game.
It'll just take care of itself. Maybe take care of one play at a time. We made more mistakes in that game, gosh darn, than probably the other 10 combined. And the kids tried really hard. It was not for lack of effort. Just kids,
Yeah.
kids are kids, and coaches are coaches, and
There's
screwy
no-
things happened.
There's no question. Our kids had tremendous effort. I was
Yeah.
very proud.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
I wasn't happy with our performance, I was tremendously proud of our efforts.
Right.
To come back the way we did at the end and continue to fight when we were in a situation with a minute and a half with no timeouts and to stop them and get the ball back and move down that quickly. I mean, our kids showed the confidence they had. It's just we had to get to that point where we didn't play with urgency earlier because we were too nervous about the outcome. But yeah, geez, there were some great things. And I think our kids also found out that all the time we put in on what we call special ops or special teams paid off, because I don't know the last time I remember prior to this year a Marine City team being beat in special teams, and our special teams was king that night. We just didn't do the other things that we expected to do.
Yeah, I know Marine City always had
absolutely.
a lot of pride.
Yes, and they should, and rightfully so. I think this year we should have had pride in ours, and we played very well. And that it's just the other areas we didn't take care of. And again, I go back. That's my job as a coach to make our kids get better psychologically as much as physically. Physically, we were prepared, and the schemes. I was real happy with our schemes. We just I don't think I was effective enough changing their mentality prior to understand to expect.
Yep. Well, you sure showed that they could bounce back, because the next week you played a tough team. Grosse Pointe North is a good team, and you went in and you beat them good, 29-7. So they bounced back. You had to be proud with them.
It was our best game, we felt. It was our best game of the season. We played pretty crisp in all areas. I mean, and we took the foot off the gas just because of the way the game was going. Once at the end of the first half, and then 2 more times at the end of the game, we really could have put 40 up. And that was a team that played Chippewa Valley tough. They lost to Lansing North by a point, lost to Grosse Pointe South by a couple points, and
I think Chip Valley by 4, right? I think
4 or 5, yeah.
the 3 previous games total were by 8 points.
They had 3 losses by 8 points.
And one of those teams was a red team. Another team was so they had a pretty tough schedule.
Yes, they
Yeah.
did.
And we played very well that game. There was no question.
That was our
No
best
question.
game.
It was
Yeah.
our best game. And it was not just because we played very well, but it was a great I think, testament to our kids to be able to bounce back. That was an emotional loss the previous week. Our kids came in Monday and they were reeling, to be quite honest with you. Normally kids bounce back so much quicker than coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around this thing since 1990, and after the weekend comes back as coaches, we show up Monday and we have to see the kids. It picks our spirits back because the kids were already they forget. Our kids weren't feeling it this year because it meant a lot to them, and it always does. But it was just it was hard initially to bounce back, and so I was just tremendously impressed and proud how well we bounced back after Monday's practice and Tuesdays and obviously Friday.
Yeah. Well, you finished the regular season then at 8-1. You've got a place in the playoffs, and not only do you have a spot in the playoffs, but you're hosting. And I had the privilege of doing the game with Bob on Channel 6. You beat Detroit Central Collegiate 32-26. I thought that game showed what coaching and discipline, how much it can make a difference. I thought athletically, you're pretty even. But in the game, they weren't disciplined. They weren't coached as well. They weren't ready like your team. You had to be happy. I thought you could have beat them even worse. There was a couple of letdowns maybe, or a couple of times they had some runners that could run. They got away, but you beat them. You advanced 32-26. You had to be happy.
Yeah, I think I would agree with a few of the things you said. I don't think we were as crisp that week as the previous week, so I think we had a few letdowns.
Could have something to do with the way you were playing.
It certainly could have, and I certainly think we could have put a couple more on and prevented another one. So we didn't play as well as we could have or should have. Particularly at that point in the year when you hope you're peaking, particularly after the previous game, you want to keep getting better. I don't think we played better that week than the previous week, which is normally not the case. Normally you get better every week. So yeah, that was probably a little bit let down, but I do agree that I think the discipline played a role in that game. But to say the coaching, I'm not sure. You could also argue, well, if we should have won by 2 more touchdowns, then maybe our coaching was not what it should have been either. At the same time. So I'm just saying, there's
I wasn't doubting the
that
coaching.
story.
No, we put
it
it on the ground a couple times in the fourth quarter. And didn't get the
Get
onside
to
kicks.
yeah.
That's 3 turnovers in a matter of 7 or 8 minutes.
7 minutes.
Right.
You're right. You're right.
So that turns it around pretty quick.
Yes, it does.
was
But
a
I mean, it was a game that was never in question. Even doing the game on television, I mean, you had them, and that wasn't going to change. You could just tell that the kids were more disciplined than they were. They were big. They had some good athletes.
Well, they had some players. And they had
Good
some talent.
runners.
Oh, we went back and watched the film. I don't remember the play that they kick off the one down and the kid picks it up on the 2 or the 4-yard line.
He's surrounded.
I watched the end zone shot, and you see just a wall of red jerseys with maybe 1 yard between each 7 kids.
And he danced out of there.
And I went back and watched it, and I still couldn't figure out how he got, but he did.
He did.
And, and I couldn't fault our kids as far as they were in the right spots. Again, maybe it was one of those they were paralyzed by his ability. Sometimes that happens.
Yes.
You kind of freeze. But holy moly, he was good.
He was very good. I was really impressed. I remember one play when he was going out around left end, and somebody hit him head on, hit him good, and the kid bounced back about 3 yards, stayed on his feet, and kept running. And I thought, this kid's good.
He's a good kid.
I don't know how big he was. We didn't have any of the sizes listed, so I don't know how big he was.
He's about
but
170, 175
That's all, huh?
pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. I was impressed.
One of the Detroit papers put an article in there, I think it was Mick McCabe, said that Central gave St. Clair all they could handle that game.
Yeah,
That kind of bothered me a little bit. I thought, it wasn't that close, man.
Well, but if you're not at the game and you look at the final score and you see it's a 6-point game, well, I mean, if you're at the game, you know what happened. And you saw that, like you said, the 2 turnovers, both deep in our end. We stopped them on one of them. I think they got the ball around the 20, 25, and we stopped them on 4 downs. We turn it over again, and they score. And get those all happen, like you said, in 7 minutes, I think?
Yeah, with
3,
9.
3 turnovers in 7 minutes makes the score, but from an outsider, you don't know that. You just see 32-26. So I can see why somebody would see that. But I felt we had the game under control even in those situations.
Well, like I said, there was never any doubt of the outcome. I mean, there was no way they were advancing. I knew that.
I had a little doubt.
Yeah. That's an offensive
You're always going to have paranoia.
Yeah.
That's
Paranoia and doubt are 2 different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're paranoid no matter what. I mean, geez, oh, Pete's
But after
Be
those
paranoid.
turnovers, those kids bounce right back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't throw their temper tantrum and kick the ground and
No.
I
throw
did-
things. Oh, did I say that?
You know,
Yeah,
that's
we
one
saw
of the
some of
things,
that.
unfortunately, as a coach, because when those things are happening, I'm so busy. I'm getting my defense out there, and I'm making sure I'm looking, in the head, talking to the coaches up, Coach Zirkle up on the booth about the personnel and what are they about to do in this situation, because it's a quick change situation, what type of big play, and so I miss, the kid getting spanked. And,
Yeah.
I miss all the fun stuff.
That was, yeah.
You got after the referee too. Right there goes the flag.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, we missed it.
Afterwards, I didn't miss that. I was a little disappointed in the post-game behavior, but I missed the during game stuff. That's
And that
all
young
fun
man
stuff.
played a good game all the way up
Yeah, he
to
did.
that point.
Yeah.
He was tough. Played on both sides of the
Yep.
ball.
Yep.
I think he was center on offense.
He liked defensive tackle, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a player.
He
No
was.
question about it.
Yeah.
A young kid too, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
think
can't
it's-
remember
I think he was
that.
a coach's son, actually.
Was he?
I hope so.
One more
Yeah,
game.
and then, you finished off with a tough team. I know that they're a combination of Detroit Finney and Detroit Crockett, both pretty good programs. Detroit East English came in and gave you a little more than you could handle.
Yeah, I was just telling Coach, 2 days ago, Sunday, I finally went back and watched that film, breaking it down. And so, of course, Sunday night I couldn't sleep. I think I literally got an hour and a half sleep that night because after, live, you don't see things like you do on film. When you play well, you think you play real well, a 46-0 game, you go back and say, geez, oh, Pete, we didn't play it as well as we thought.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a matter of your mistakes weren't exploited and you exploited their mistakes and covered for your own, and you happen to get 46 points. I don't mean that it's an accident, but, guy that misses a block, well, we happen to go that way, or whatever the situation might
Sure.
be. And in that game, you walk off the field and say, we just got physically manhandled. And then you watch film, and if physically they were, I would in no way, shape, or form suggest they weren't physically superior. I mean, size-wise, speed-wise, and also ability. They're well coached, and they have very good football talent, not just
Yeah,
athletic talent.
That's right.
So I'd be foolish to say that wasn't the case. They were better than we were in those respects, but we should have been much more competitive in that game. It was not nearly as we weren't as physically dominant as I thought up front. We made just a lot of mistakes. It was another one of those games. I think we were. People had already talked to him about, hey, it could be the first 10-win season in school history. Here's a second district title. So I think we were so much worried about the outcome. Then we also had 4 million people. Obviously, I'm speaking.
That's our
figuratively here.
viewership on Channel 6.
But talking about how good they were and all this. So I think there's so many things in our head that we couldn't get clarity in the game, and as a result, I think we made a lot of mistakes that we didn't make, except one of the games of the season where we didn't. And so the common denominator again is just mentally. I don't think we played clear. Would it have changed the outcome? Probably not. But would we have given them a game? And I think definitely we should have given a much better
far
game.
more competitive.
It should have been much more competitive. Yep.
I noticed early in the season, a lot of teams didn't block and tackle well. And I know from talking to you and from knowing you when you were in Marine City, tackling that's a big thing. But there was a lot of teams. I'm going to mention them, the Lakeshore teams. They didn't block and tackle well at all. And I just wonder, how can they well, I guess they can't compete, huh?
Well, and I can't speak what they do with their
I know,
practice.
I know.
I know we certainly emphasize that there's an old saying, you get what you practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you are what you repeatedly do. We practice blocking and tackling fundamentally, very regularly, daily. But also a big part of tackling, particularly in today's game, where we're spreading people out. Not we so much, although we do a little bit, but the game has evolved where people
Sure.
are spread out and you're trying to get that special athlete in space. A lot of times, even as much as you practice tackling, you're going to miss. A big part of tackling is getting 11 guys hungry for the football.
Right.
And I think, that's one thing we did very well. I think we did tackle pretty well this year. I think we did tackle well. But we had moments where a guy missed, but sometimes we have a guy miss and 5 other guys are there, and as a result, nobody sees the missed tackle because there's just a sea of red jerseys. So a lot of tackling just comes down to tackling it's a team sport,
Yes, it is.
you know, and I think we did that pretty well. And
East English had that running back that was hard to tackle, period.
Well, that again, that's why I go back to they were awfully good. I mean, and it wasn't just their backs. Their line was big, and everybody said they were big. But last year we faced a Madison team that was a very good Madison team, and they had 300-pounders up front, and we still, I think, ran for 350 yards on them.
Right. This team was much better.
Their big guys could play. They as low as those big bodies could get, they got, and they're I think technically pretty sound, and they knew how to run their combination blocks from one level to the next, and so you're talking about those backs, and rightfully so. They were tremendously impressive, but they were very good in I think all aspects. Geez, Pete's. It's the first game we got our butts kicked in special teams, and they did. And it was weird because we watched, I don't know how much film we watched, and that one of the battle cries we had with our kids is we're going to win special teams. That's one of the areas we're going to exploit. It's one of our strengths. It has not been their strength. We're watching their kickoff. They maybe 1 or 2 times got it inside the 20 all year. And all of a sudden, the kid that's never kicked on film, he was always one of their gunners coming down. He kicks off and kicks in the end zone. Their extra point, I think we saw him make 1 extra point in all the film we watch. They missed one in our game. The rest, boom, 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 boom. I don't know what in the world happened there. So
They're saving them for you.
A ringer.
They played a very complete game, and I give
Yeah,
great credit to their kids and to their coaching staff because they had them peaking. They played their best game in district finals. That's kudos to them.
And that's the one coaching staff you see at all the clinics from the PSL. You don't see many PSL staffs, and you see them every single time. They work real hard. They do a good job.
Okay.
Something I was impressed with all season long was the lack of dumb penalties.
Right.
Didn't have them this year. That was great.
Part
Well,
of the
you probably
discipline.
you'll disagree. You say
Yeah,
but
no, you're right.
there weren't that obvious.
There were fewer.
There were fewer, and that's a good thing. Good coaching right there.
Well, it's the kids just, we stress it every year. It's just sometimes kids understand it a little bit better, and a lot of that has to do with the culture that is created through playing multiple sports, because all sports preach discipline. If you're playing basketball, if you're playing hockey, you got to be in position. You can't take dumb penalties. All sports develop competitiveness, and teamwork. And so, you always want kids to lift and run, but you can do that, and you should be able to do that while playing other sports. We want our kids to lift during football season. You can't work on your competitiveness, and you can't work on those things if you're not playing other sports. So I think one of the things that helped our discipline is we had a lot of kids that are playing other sports. And so if they're playing, basketball or baseball or wrestling, in hockey, they understand that they have to be disciplined, and that carries over to the next sport. And on top of that, like I said earlier, the amount of kids that really bought into the importance of weight training and speed training and showing up and off. The more you put in, the harder it is to surrender. And so you're willing to do all those things, and you're willing to listen more and understand all the little things that go into it. If you put all the time, if you just showed up and both of the kids just showed up in August, losing or messing up is not that important because you didn't put much into it.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure we've all been in situations where we didn't put much into it and we put something into it. We just with kids, we talked to the kids about, you've all had those essays you put nothing into and got a bad grade, and you said, oh, no big deal, I deserve it. But when you busted your butt and you didn't do so well, you're going back and trying to understand what happened. That's the same thing, on the field. If you put all the time in, you're going to make sure you did anything you can to make sure you're successful. So a lot of discipline comes from what happened prior to the season, either through other athletics they were playing and through their off-season commitment to making themselves better athletes.
Quick, get Jim Schwartz on the phone. Tell him to have those boys play baseball and basketball.
Yeah.
It might help them.
And the Pistons better start.
Where do you go from here? What's next?
I'm going to have dinner. We haven't set our off-season weight training schedule yet, but that's going to start pretty soon. Our banquet is the 29th. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been giving out the message that we're probably starting to have the day after Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
so you better get ready.
It's one of those deals. It's hard because I think it's very important to give kids at least a little break.
Sure.
Because they got to be fresh coming back, and it's a vicious cycle in sports these days. It's even to me, it's even way worse at the lower levels when kids are asked to play 100 games of baseball in the summer when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then they're trying to play these travel, whatever travel league it's in, whether it's basketball or soccer or whatever else. And I'm sure we'd say the same thing about football if they had travel football, because somebody would be out there being psychotic about that, making them play too much football in the off season.
Yeah.
So we got to find a balance to let the kids.
It's got to remain fun.
relax. Exactly.
You know, but you have to work because winning is fun.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, so it's it goes around.
And
But you need a
really
break.
fun in the weight room. I mean, our kids, like any kid, they show up in the weight room and they're tired when they show up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But within 15 minutes, they got bounced to their step. They walk out smiling, joking, having fun after they just sweated their body parts off. And so it's a balance about when you want to start that and when you have to give them a little break. Because the other danger is if you go too long, then out of sight, out of mind, attitudes are contagious, laziness and activity are contagious. And if you start getting a little complacent of sitting around the couch, so it's a balance, and I don't know, it's different every time.
The
Yeah,
kids have
I
asked
know.
me, that comes from having a good season. If we came off a 2-7 season, the kids wouldn't be tracking me down saying when are we gonna start weights.
Yeah.
You know, just winning breeds excitement. So
Well, you certainly had a good season. At 9-2, you finished, and we have to give your other coaches a little shout out. Who's your assistants?
Oh man, it's our whole program from 9 through is really our assistants, and vice versa. We went out to Lowell High School a couple years ago with Noel Dean and stole a whole bunch of ideas on how to organize practice differently. When you have fewer coaches, we were having a hard time for a while
I know.
getting a number of coaches. So really, I mean, our assistants are freshman coaches. Sam Schweifer and Denny White. They work with our varsity, and then we assist them on their, with freshmen. And then Tony Kaiser and John Kuzma, they're the JV coaches, and they help us, and vice versa. But and then Ryan Zirkle does, we talked about our special teams, our special ops. Well, Ryan Zirkle is our special ops coordinator, and so you got to give him a lot of credit because he was prepared for our kids every week. And when he's prepared for our kids, that gives us more time to work on offense and defense.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got somebody that's totally committed to making sure that they've scouted the opponent, I don't have to watch so much. Obviously, I'm going to anyway, but I don't have to get all the nuts and bolts, nor does he on one area. We know Ryan's taking care of that. We can just do some things that we know we have to take care of from our end. So he just did a great job of that. And we had, Coach Pops and Coach Bacon, tag team on our defensive line. But those are the guys that do all the extra things on top of it. Coach Pops, besides doing a great job of the D-line, he takes care of all our equipment issues, and prepared to make sure all those type of things that are football related but not on the field related. And then Coach Bacon, his head doesn't stop thinking. And he's constantly just thinking of new things that we have to do. Whether a lot of the, again, organizational stuff, motivational stuff, team building stuff,
computer stuff,
the technology, the video, and so he does a lot of that thing. And there's so many people that do so much, and it's awesome. I told our kids before the season started, before our first game, I said, this is the most fun I've ever had coaching. I said, I've been coached since 1990. I've coached on district title teams. I've coached on teams in regionals. I've coached on 9-0 teams. It's the most fun I've ever had. And we hadn't won a game yet. So sometimes people say, well, it was fun because we were 9-2. No, it was fun when we were 0-0. Mm-hmm. And it was fun because the kids, I think the couple of the top reasons we had success is we had tremendous leadership.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I know you're a young team. Who was your senior leaders?
Well, we had a lot of it started with our captains.
Yeah.
Blake Beaver and Josh Mead and Cody Mahaffey were just outstanding captains. And then, but we had some other non-captains that were good leaders out there for us as well that just stepped up. And we had some underclassmen that have been there for a couple years now, and they stepped up. But really, it started with those three because they don't give two squats who gets the kudos, who gets their name in the paper. They're the first guys out there to make sure we got the scout team ready. And if you guys like that, they're selfless. And they genuinely, you talk about selfless, they genuinely didn't care. They just wanted to make sure that we got everything done well. And so the other kids, jump on board and do the same thing. And then our kids, the kids even talked about it. It was not a junior senior team. It was
No.
a team. It was a team.
That's correct.
It was 100% team. And so all those things just made it just so much fun this year.
You talked about Denny White coaching ninth grade. How did he handle the transition from a leather helmet to a real helmet? I mean,
Well, he still wears his leather helmet
Does he?
in
Okay.
practice to protect himself.
sorry about that, Dan. No, I'm not.
And that's another thing, with us all working together like that. I mean, we had great fun at all levels. We had great success on the win-loss record on freshman and JV, as well as the enjoyment of the game, and that was a big part of it. I got to give a shout out. Hopefully, Coach White comes back. You never know, because sometimes you just get to a point where I'm ready to move on. Coach Pop's been with me since I started as a head coach. This is his last year. He's not coming back next year.
Awesome.
Did you train him or he trained you?
Yes. To be honest with you,
A little bit of both, probably.
yeah, I think probably X's and O's. I probably helped him a fair amount, but I don't think you can be a good coach. I don't think you can be a good store manager. I don't think you can be a good neighbor if you didn't learn how to be the right type of person. And everything I learned starts with my dad.
Sure.
So any success that I may have, whether it's perceived or not accurate or is accurate, it's because of what I learned from him. So I may give him X's and O's, but he took care of the foundation to start with. We talk about football being blocking and tackling. Well, he gave me the blocking and tackling, and I just figured out with the help of a lot of other guys, some other things. But so we're going to miss him. I appreciate everything he's done for us, and I think the kids are going to miss him because they love him.
Yeah. Well, you had a great year.
Yes.
I'm glad you guys came in so we could talk about it. You've got a lot of kids coming back next year, so you got to be looking forward to next year too.
Oh yeah, and we're definitely looking forward to next year. And no matter what, we're always looking forward to next year. But I'm looking forward to starting weights up again, to be quite honest with you. But I do have to break because I have stuff I still have to take care of.
Yeah, you got to cut your grass. Haven't cut your grass since last August, right?
I haven't done a lot of things that day.
I know what it's like.
So why don't you start an arena football team for this high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
We
That-
take so much grief from that.
That's it. And that really is one of the, that's one of the positives. We rip on governing bodies regularly, whether it's the government, the national government or a local school board. But that's one of the positives of things like the MHSAA, because it didn't have rules like that. They protect us from ourselves, because I know what I'm like, and I can be philosophical, but I also can be maniacal, and so they keep us from trying to do football year round. Other sports don't have the same restrictions,
Yeah, you're
unfortunately. I mean that, unfortunately, not to them, but I think it hurts the kids overall at times. So they protect us from ourselves, because we were joking about the Arena League, but I'm sure we would be, if there weren't restrictions, we'd be finding, you hear the old stories about these coaches, and back when Detroit was a nicer town, and the coaches were having practices in January in the gym and bank balconies and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and probably would be happening everywhere if we didn't have those rules.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing we have them.
Yeah, I agree.
Along with those rules, and it's a good thing we have an audience too.
Yeah.
Because without the audience, nobody would be watching
If
us.
you don't get me off, stop talking, you're not going to have one. I apologize.
No, don't do that.
You heard it first here, folks. Bill Nesbitt said that.
Well, that's all I have.
That's all you have?
Uh-huh.
What's on the other side of this paper? Nothing?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for coming in, you guys.
Well, we didn't get that far, but it was, and you're right, it's the two groups I didn't mention yet, and because I don't want
Yeah,
to
well, yeah.
keep rambling, but I think our parent support was outstanding. We had two different parent groups this year that gave us just great support, from building sleds for us again, training equipment, tailgates. We had just amazing tailgates, and that's a big part of it. One of the great things I love about football in general, we used to go have season tickets to Lions games, and one of the reasons I like those as much more than other games is because it's an event.
Uh-huh.
And so we had events every week, whether it was a road game or a home game. And then our
Whole pigs.
whole pigs
in the parking
and
lot.
it was,
We didn't get it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, they did it up, and putting flags out, and we got the smoke we've been looking for a lot of years, and finally got some dads that were able to get that together, and all kinds of noisemakers, and the moms just do an outstanding job of getting the signs out and getting meals ready for our kids. But then the cheerleaders this year just get it to a new level. Again, that's one of those things. Over time, things change, and cheerleading over time became a very competitive sport.
Yes, it did.
And I don't mean that it's a negative or positive. It's just what it became. But one of the negatives as a result is it lost some of that unity between the other sports because it was its own entity, which sometimes took away from it being part of a bigger cause.
Right.
And this year we got back to it. And I'm very fortunate. My wife and Casey Rebecki were co-coaches for cheerleading, and they had a different vision. And then now they're in competitive, and they're ready to roll with that. But during the football, it was really unity with our program. They got back to putting signs on the lockers and bringing treats to the kids, and I thought it was awesome. I understand that I don't see those things, but when the opponent is leaving the games, our cheerleaders are giving them kudos and compliments and picking their heads up. Well, I think that's huge because that's part of high school athletics.
That's right.
And they were a great ambassador of our sport this year. Our cheer team was, and they were a big part of the atmosphere and climate that we had in town.
Super.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Doesn't get any better than that.
No, it's just a lot of fun when you get a whole community working together. I don't care with football or building the old days of a community getting together to erect a barn because somebody needed a new barn. That's what makes some of the things that make life worthwhile. And to me, the community rallying together for our barn this year was our football program, and that was awesome.
You need some help with your shed, Jerry?
That's all. It's done. It's torn down.
Well, great stuff. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us here today. We appreciate it. Congratulations on a wonderful season. And looking forward to bigger and better things next year.
You bet. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thanks. Good seeing you guys
Thanks,
again.
guys.
And we thank you for watching, and we'll look forward to next time right here on the Sports Zone. So long, everybody.